This is going to be a bit of a rough and tumble video. I don't plan on doing a lot of editing. I have some notes to keep me on track, but I wanted to give a brief reaction to The Backrooms. I don't go to the movie theater very often to see movies anymore because I am over and over disappointed by movies, even when I sit down and watch them in my own living room. However, The Backrooms is something I was familiar with from the online YouTube series by Kane Parsons, who directed the movie, and had watched some of the YouTube stuff several years ago. So I was intrigued by it and intrigued to see what he would do as a director with the material that he in large part is responsible for. I know there's other influences that precede him, but he really has popularized it. So yesterday I paid the exorbitant amount to get a ticket and went to the movie theater locally and watched The Backrooms. Sort of my gut reaction to say is just it doesn't disappoint. It is true to what the web series was and maintains a lot of the same mystery and intrigue. So experientially, it's a very enjoyable film, and I thought I was pleased with it. I was glad that I spent the money to go see it in the theater. It provoked a memory in my head. I was a pretty big online multiplayer when it came to Xbox 360 in particular. Played a lot of different Xbox games online. And I remember when the announcement was made that Microsoft's going to shut down the servers for a game. I want to say it was Halo 2. Might have been a different game. I had played countless hours of that game and run around all those 3D maps for years at that point. And so there was a group of people who basically said, "Hey, we're not gonna log off. We're gonna stay logged in and keep playing," to force them to keep the servers open for as long as possible. And as people fell off, either I got to go to work and they logged out, or maybe their Xbox got turned off accidentally and they got logged out, or somebody's network went down and they got logged out. Slowly the people were weeded out and they couldn't log back in once you were out. So these people were just trying to stay in as long as possible, and it got down to the point that finally the last player was logged out and the servers shut down forever. And the way my brain thinks is not logical, very much more of a story. And I just remember imagining not just that game, but like all multiplayer games of the past that used to be populated with these virtual avatars running around. There they are, all out there somewhere, empty, desolate, just sitting there. The weapon drops are still there, the vehicles are still there, the terrain is still there. It's all there, and there's nobody playing. And that's not a spoiler. The movie isn't saying that it's a video game. It's just a sense of the place and how it connects with it. There is a connection with some, shall we say, glitches in The Backrooms that kind of connect with a computer world idea. But I remembered that memory and that sense of just almost sort of a hollow, depressing feeling of imagining all these empty spaces unpopulated. That is The Backrooms. That is what it is. And that reminded me of the only horror story I ever quit reading because it disturbed me so deeply. I have quit reading some horror stories because they were too gory, and I don't care for that. It makes me queasy, and sometimes feels very manipulative when you're the reader. So gore, I have quit some books, some Stephen King books, just because I'm like, yeah, all right, dude, we didn't need all the details on how the knife sliced yeah, okay, got it. But the one book that I quit because it truly disturbed me was a book by H.P. Lovecraft. And I don't remember which one it was. It could have been The Call of Cthulhu. I'm not sure. But it really disturbed me deeply. And the reason that it disturbed me, I think, is the reason it connects with a lot of people or grabs a lot of people. And that is that you truly feel like you're looking over the edge into this infinite abyss of meaninglessness. I've heard it described as that existential dread. That's a great way to describe it. There is an existential dread to being so small in such a vast galaxy, and that galaxy not knowing, caring, loving you, and possibly just crushing you under its foot at any moment, and you're a blink. You're nothing. You're dust in the wind. The writing of H.P. Lovecraft, that book that I read of his, really, really piped that into my soul, and it was too much. It was too terrifying. That might be a little bit odd to admit, but there it is. And I was thinking about that as I was driving away from the movie, because that is actually what makes the movie so gripping. And I don't know that I've heard anyone else make that connection. The Backrooms is a modern version of H.P. Lovecraft. It is a Call of Cthulhu, existential dread movie, because there is no explanation. There is no builder of the Backrooms. It is nothing but some sort of a glitch, an echo of reality, and it goes on for infinity, and it means nothing, and it's absurd. The architecture is absurd. The meaning is absurd. There's no purpose or aim to it. It is just a thing, and you will never get to the end of it. You will never find the end, and if you die in it, you are dust in the wind. You are nothing. There is no God that will mourn you or care for you or save your soul. You will just be refuse in a meaningless and pointless universe, which is the Backrooms. Let me turn and kind of talk a little more about like the craft of the movie. Number one, obviously, the director knows how to make a movie. He does a great job of taking what is kind of an abstract found footage web series and then turning it into a narrative film with actual characters. There's some weaknesses, but overall, you're not going to watch this movie and think it was made by an amateur. I really appreciated the unresolved nature of the mystery. It would have been a weakness. The film would have been weaker if he had attempted to sort of tie it all together at the end and explain everything, because, and this goes back to the H.P. Lovecraft connection, the horror of the Backrooms is that it is unexplainable, that there is no explanation for why it is, what it is, where it came from, where it's going. And if that ever gets resolved, if they start making sequels and start resolving all the mystery, it will ruin it. The only thing I would critique more strongly when it comes to the writing or the plotting is I wish the characters' arcs had been a little more blatant, that they had been a little more clear on what the resolution was. I don't fully understand the psychiatrist character and what her arc was and how she was sort of came to a new place in her mind at the end, but there seemed to be an attempt to say, look, she's grown and she's changed, but it wasn't really clear what her problem was or how she overcame it or what her new state of being was. The protagonist, his character was a little clearer, I thought, as far as what his arc was, but still, I would have preferred that the characters' arcs had been much more on the nose. It's great to leave the Backrooms mysterious and unresolved, but the characters being resolved, I think, would have made it stronger. The one thing that kind of really bugs me about the film is it should have been a PG-13 movie. It should have, and I think the only reason it wasn't was because of the inclusion of the F word. And this just irks me. Okay, so I'm not against the F word being used. If you're making a period piece in certain places and times, you would have to include it if you're trying to be faithful to the period. This goes for any sort of foul language. He worked so hard to make the world of the Backrooms feel like 1990. The tech was 1990. Stuff that was on the TVs they were watching in the movie was 1990. It was very clear, like, this is a set piece. Well, Kane, you're 20 years old, and I got to tell you, in 1990, it was not common parlance to use the F word. It was not normal for just everyday people to talk like that. And the inclusion of it actually breaks some of the reality, just as much as excluding it from certain settings and characters would break the reality. The violence that's in the film, and I'm not going to give any details away, but the violence was more censored than the language. The violence was more left up to your imagination. So the film, I think, would have had a PG-13 if they'd just taken the stupid F word out. And it didn't add anything. It didn't make it seem more realistic to the time. It actually drew too much attention to itself. Let me give another positive note, though. This movie is really good in a way other films fail, in that when you watch the trailer, it'll be enough to give you a sense for what the movie's going to be without giving anything away. There's infamous films of the past where the trailer shows so much that when you go see the movie, you already know the whole movie. This movie does a good job of basically creating a trailer out of the first third of the film. There's probably images from later in the movie. Yeah, there are images from later in the movie now that I think of it. But what I'm saying is you don't get plot points in the trailer that happen later in the film. So it teases enough, and yet when you go see it, there are things you do not expect and do not know are coming until you see them. And it will get you. It will make you afraid, and there's some good sort of jump scares to it, plot points that are not in the trailer, so you'll be surprised. And that's a strength, because so often the trailers just give you the whole movie and there's no surprise. So that was brilliantly done. The other thing that he does really good in the movie is, I'll call it the Jaws effect. Where in Jaws you don't see the shark until late in the movie, and there's sort of a crescendo of interactions with the shark. At first it's just sort of this undertone of terror, and then something happens where someone dies and you see blood in the water, but you don't see the shark yet, and it keeps going and going until bam, you see the shark. There's a crescendo in the backrooms too, visually, where you're seeing more and more strange imagery, but he saves the strangest stuff for the end. So it crescendos nicely, where as a viewer you're drawn in, and it's getting weirder and weirder and weirder. The most dramatic scene as far as the backrooms architecture is right at the end of the film, like right towards the end. And it's breathtaking. It's a breathtaking moment to see the vastness of the backrooms suddenly open up. It's wonderfully done. It's skillfully done. And I really appreciated that, because it shows that he understands not just what visually is going to be gripping, but also where to place it in the film, so you have a crescendo that draws the audience in. Instead of hitting a peak somewhere in the middle and then having it taper off, he preserves that nice arc that keeps you watching. So in summary, it's a very intriguing film, skillfully made. Kind of puts us to shame, people who have wanted to make movies, to watch what a 20-year-old YouTuber can do, and well deserved as far as the praise it's gotten.